Go, and then we'll go live on Facebook. It's live. So those on the watching this recording, just hang on a tick. Going live is, and there we go. He's preparing to live stream. Got it.
Nice.
All right, everyone, we're live on Facebook, and I am just going to tag everybody on the Facebook group so they know we're live. So everyone's really busy at the moment. There we go. I'm getting the hang of this. After 11 days, I'm finally getting the hang of the tech. Oh gosh, this has been find so much joy in all the different things. You know, you could either you have a choice. You either get frustrated, or the other things you can just laugh and go, oh, this is something new. I've got to learn to press another button.
Right, exactly.
So everyone, welcome to our final day of our Joy and Abundance Beyond Burnout Summit. We have had 11 days. It's been an adventure and a journey for some of us on empowering our lives. And it's something that's been bantered around for a lot. Like people go, oh yeah, let's empower your life. Let's empower your life. I get it. And there's so much stuff happening around us, that so much information that we're getting really bombarded, and you know, it's a bit overwhelming. And what I would really, for me personally, is for you to just take home one thing from each of our speakers, and you have access to recordings. So just one thing that you can take home just for 24 hours to see how that sits in your body, how that feels in your body, and how that feels in your life. And from that one thing, you can then transform whatever you need in your time and in whatever situation you're in to help you move forward in redefining that joy and abundance in your life. So today I'm so glad to have Tanmeet with me today. And before we start, I am going to do my usual welcome to country, which is in the acknowledgement of the traditional owners of the land. So please join me in this ceremony. It's also a ceremony of thanks for the whole summit and for us being held in that supportive space. So the place where I am the host of this Joy and Abundance Summit, where I work and stay, spans the lands of the Wadawurrung people of the Kulin Nations. I acknowledge them as the traditional owners and protectors of this place. I also pay my deepest respects to their elders, past, present, and future, who continue on this path. I also pay my deepest respects and give my deepest thanks to the traditional owners and keepers of the lands of which the speakers live, work, play. Thank you. My deepest gratitude. Okay, we are day 11. And are you now sitting back again with your favorite beverage? I always say this, but I've got mine. So if you see me sipping, it's beautiful chai tea, which I love, handmade. And to finally join us for this last day of our summit. So I am Vanessa Mollard, if you've just joined us. As a scientist for 25 years trying to look for the solutions of what in the world is joy and abundance mean to me. In the process, I was burnt out. It was completely overwhelming, and that's because I was looking in all the wrong places. So today, Tanmeet and I will share, we'll discuss her latest book, which is going to be absolutely amazing for our summit. And I met her while I was on LinkedIn, actually. and Anna Choi, who was in the last summit, was promoting Tanmeet's new book, which we'll talk about. And I went, oh, hold on.
Yes.
Sounds amazing. And her book is called Joy is My Justice, Reclaim What Is Yours. And it really stirred I don't know, it just stirred something within me, almost like a birthright when I heard that title, almost like a sense of strength from deep within, and reclaiming. So all those words really got to me. And I went, hey, you know what? This is a great way of ending, sort of wrapping up the summit, wrapping up what I feel that I believe in, because we often think that sometimes joy and abundance is all nice, light and fluffy. And I think, sometimes there is an inner strength that comes from it when we actually know what we truly want in our lives, not what everyone else tells us, but what we truly want. And so these 11 days have been delving into each of those little things. But today, I think with my conversation with Tanmeet, I think we're going to bring something else, a different dimension into this whole topic of joy and abundance, which we're all researching in our own ways about. So yeah, I will introduce Tanmeet first. And because I just met her, so I'm just going to read from her bio, but she's just this beautiful person I've connected with. This is why I do a summit, so I can connect with some people. She's a board-certified integrative family medicine physician and clinical associate professor at the University of Washington School of Medicine. She has spent past 25 years working on the front lines of the most marginalized communities, as well as globally with victims of school shootings, survivors of hurricanes, citizens impacted by police violence, and psychologists in Ukraine under attack. Tanmeet has created entire integrative medicine programs from the ground up, including the first ever fellowship in Washington State. Her expertise is widely recognized in both local and national work, which includes leading programs on healing from trauma, thought-provoking presentations to both medical and non-medical organizations, and multiple articles and textbook chapters on integrative medicine. And she's just released her book, Joy is My Justice, Reclaim What Is Yours. And it's a radical guide to the conversation we need on healing, rooted in powerful stories, potent guided exercises and meditations, and neuroscience. If you think finding joy is too hard, too much to hope for, or only for people who are resilient enough, this book is for you. Joy is liberation in your body, the truest justice you will ever know. Welcome, Tanmeet.
Thank you, Vanessa. And thank you for that very kind introduction. Thank you. I'm really excited to be here with you today.
Oh, thank you so much. I would firstly love to hear the story of how, why did you write the book? And what was the, it's probably so many questions in that one question, but also, how did that, sort of birth in you? What's your story? We would love to hear it.
Yeah. Well, it's really a coalescing, a coming together of my personal and professional journeys. And so, I was pregnant with my third child on top of the world after years of infertility and never thought I would have children. And I was having my third. And I received a devastating diagnosis for my second, who was barely 3 at the time. And that was of what is similar to an ALS in children. And so a degenerative and fatal illness. And in that moment, I had been a social justice activist already for more than 15 years in my life. And I always fight back. When things are wrong, I fight. If someone's being oppressed, I fight.
Yeah.
And in that moment, there was no justice to be had. There was nothing to fight for. It was this end all verdict. And I really had to reconcile how I was going to live this life, how I was going to thrive. I knew I could get through it, but how was I going to thrive?
Yeah.
And it was then in that journey of figuring that out that I realized that if I fought for myself, for my own joy, that actually I would find the deepest justice there is. And that's the liberation of your body, of feeling safe and at ease and at joy in your body in a truly deep way. And so, I used to never think joy and justice were connected. In fact, I thought my justice work meant I had to suffer, because if I was too joyful, then I would not be thinking about the suffering and I wouldn't be fighting hard enough.
Yep.
But now I understand that if we feel more justice in our body, that work and practice of joy is justice work. And the more we can feel that personally, the more we can contribute to the collective, if that's what we choose to do. And the better we can work towards justice in the world.
Wow, that's a profound realization.
It was
And
for me, yes.
yeah, and it is for me too. That's why when I read the title of your book, I just went, oh my gosh, I really get it. Just the title in itself, it got me, because I'm like you. I fight for a lot of different things, and justice is my big one. And so that is kind of why I do certain work that I do. And also, one of my biggest dreams is to help our Indigenous communities here. We're going into science, technology, and education and medicine, because in their own way, of course, to contribute. And that, yes, and you can work towards that justice and just get burnt out, which a lot of people do, and they just don't find that joy. They forget about the joy. They actually, personally anyway, I can't say for anyone else, personally, you just forget that there was a certain sort of joy within you, a certain source of strength and truth in who you are. And you just start ticking the boxes and you forget that. And from that place of strength, you can actually tap into your biggest superpowers, your biggest human strength that will provide more for everyone else around you. And that's my personal experience anyway. And so that's incredible. So people have asked me, so yeah, I'm happy. So, what's the big deal? And I think there's a deeper meaning between joy and happiness. What is your reflection on that?
Yeah, I think they're actually quite distinct from each other. And that is that we do a disservice when we confuse them. So they have some overlap. They both feel good. They both are things we want. And, I'll take happiness any day.
Yes.
But it is a cognitive construct. It's in our mind. It's an evaluation of what is happening in our lives. Did I get the job I wanted? Did this work out for me at work? Did my child get on the soccer team they wanted to? I mean, none of these are wrong or bad to hope for at all, but they are cognitive constructs. And when the cognitive constructs of your life are not happy, then you are left to be made feel broken, that you're not good enough at getting better because you can't be happy. But the truth is, we can't always be happy. We may be in poverty. We may be struggling with 2 jobs. We may have lost the dearest person in our life. We may have had a very big tragedy occur for us, and that is not happy. And so joy, however, is a deeply embodied experience. It's not cognitive. It comes from the same deep well as pain. It comes from the same deep well as our capacity for love and meaning and connection. And so when we realize that joy was never taken from us and cannot be given to us, that it is our experience to be had in our bodies. The more we enter into our body, calming and soothing our nervous system and using practices that I talk about in the book, the more we realize that joy is something that's accessible to all of us. It is an innate birthright. Happiness comes from external things. And like I said, it's not all bad. They're not all material, or they're the joy of the happiness of watching your family flourish. And that can be joyful too. There is overlap.
Yeah.
But when we get into our body and experience true joy, we realize that we can be in a moment of pain and joy, even right next to each other. We also realize that when we numb to our pain, when we shut off to our pain, people will tell me this all the time in the exam room. My patients will say, I just feel numb.
Yep.
And what I tell them is, if you're numbing to all of the pain, you're also numbing to opening up to everything else, which
Yes.
is the love, the meaning, the connection, the joy. And so what I would offer to people is that if we always turn away from our pain, we are also turning away from our joy.
Yeah. And again, this is something that I've learned as well, where I numbed out a lot of my pain. So my mom had cancer and she died when I was 13. So there was a lot of pain associated with that. The one thing I was told by everyone around me was, don't be sad, don't cry when she died. So what do you do as what do you do as a child? So you numb it, because that's not what's expected of you. You're supposed to go there, be strong. Don't cry. If you cry, you're letting your father down. See all those words. And there was nothing wrong with what they were trying to say, because they was trying to be as supportive as they could at the time. But the effect of that was that numbing of that pain, and that went on through the rest of my life. And in the end, it started to affect my joy in experiencing a job that I worked so hard for to get to as a scientist and loved. But then I couldn't love it anymore. There was something that was numbing in me, and I could not feel that anymore. I could not feel the deep joy of having a husband that loves me, of being with my friends. There was happiness.
Yes.
But there wasn't any deep joy. And that was when I knew it was time. I had to figure out, what in the world is this about? Why am I feeling it in my body? And so hence, that's where I went on my journey. And one of the tools that I discovered that I consider my superpower, I love it, is breathwork, because it really brings it. And what I realized was just what you said. I had to experience the sadness and the pain before I could really start to understand what joy was to me. So I really resonate with what you've just said there.
Thank you for sharing that story. Yes.
You're welcome. It's been an interesting revelation for me as well, just pretty much like what you're in your own journey as well. And so, so I guess when we're in a situation where life is really tough for us, and you and I are on the same sort of heart-based thing, where we look at the marginalized communities and say, how can we, what is it that we can really bring with this learning that we've got to them, to help them? And is joy critical for a path to help healing these communities from oppression? Like, you have worked with so many of these communities. So I would love to know if that's something that's available that we can really sort of bring to them.
And I would say yes, and I'll tell you why. I will say that it comes back to that joy understanding first, which is that joy is not a destination or a solution. It is a way to hold all the questions and the suffering. And so we think that people who are suffering still can't have joy until they get through their suffering. And what I would say is no, it's important to open to moments of joy and be in your suffering at the same time to heal it. The reason joy is so critical for any community or individual who is managing an oppressive society or system or job or family or anything
Yep.
is that the way that systems of oppression thrive is that they thrive when you do not. They strip you of your humanity. They strip you of your power.
Yep.
And joy is a way to reclaim power and humanity, your full spectrum of humanity. It is a way to remember that you are not just the tragedy and the suffering. You are a human with the capacity for the full continuum of experience. And anytime you reclaim that power in your body, you are inciting your own revolution and liberation from the exact oppression that has stripped it from you to begin with. And so it is critical. So it's not only that it's available to all of us, it is actually critical that the more you suffer, the more you need joy to be a companion through that suffering.
Wow. Yes, I'm just going to breathe into that. That was a really big message. Yeah. Yes. I have no reflection on that because it's just going through my body at the moment, and I can just feel that strength in your words and what you're saying there.
I love that you had to breathe it in. I think it's a good example for people that you are clearly, you said breath work is your superpower. And when we do embodied work like breath work, that's one of the things I talk about in the book as well. Yep. When we use breath, what we realize is that we can use it to hold and to receive what we are experiencing in any given moment. It also reminds us that we can start over in any given moment. We can come back to our breath again and again and again. No matter how many times thoughts intrude, we can come back over and over. We can make space with our breath. That's why we tell people, take a deep breath. Don't hold your breath, let it out, take a big exhale, because what we're saying is create space for something bigger, for a story that's bigger than the one you've been given.
Yes, yes. And also, as you said, it clears space. For me, I feel it also clears a path. Like I find that sometimes we walk on a path that is like full of leaves, full of detritus, full of debris. And we're stepping over certain things, we may fall on a rock and stuff like that. But as we breathe or do any of the coming back into your body, really feeling, being holding that those feelings, those emotions, that energy that's going through your body, and realizing and remembering. I like the word remembering. That's been a big thing for me as well. Remembering how we are, that ability to we have that joy in us, that deep knowing, that deep longing, our humanity in us, and it just helps to clear those leaves, those paths away, and help us move more clearly into that right.
Yes.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. Yes.
And so how do the tools in you mentioned, I had a brief look at what your book was, and I'm really excited to get it actually. How do the tools in your book activate, like, so when we talk about the nervous system, we're in fight or flight, and when we are in frustration, anger, sadness, this is all the sympathetic nervous system coming through into our bodies as well. And we're highly activated because there's all these external things that are happening to us that are not really what we want, and we're just feeling like we're under threat, we're under attack. And for some communities, they are under threat.
Yes.
I'm not even going to say you're not. So
right.
How would we then help to activate, like sort of help the nervous system to calm down, so that in a situation where we are still under attack, we can really start to access and tap into our strength of our humanity and bring out that joy.
I am so glad you said that, that sometimes it isn't safe, actually. It's not just an image, it actually
Oh,
isn't safe.
yeah.
And so what we're doing when we regulate our nervous system is we're actually, it's honestly, it's a bold act of justice whenever we use any of these
Yeah.
tools, because what we're doing is allowing ourselves, just as you said, we're under threat, whether real or perceived, it doesn't matter. Our body and our brain are under threat and attack. When we are, then when we use a tool like, let's take an example of gratitude, which it has been poo-pooed and people say like, oh, gratitude is just, false positivity or contrived. I think it is wielded that way. I do believe that. I do believe sometimes it's offered in a very trite way, but it is a very powerful tool of justice, because
Mm.
what it is a way to stimulate the neurochemicals of connection, of feeling held and safe. And actually, in studies, they show that when we practice gratitude, the same areas of our brain circuitry light up as do if someone who loves us holds our hand while we're in pain. Gratitude is a companion for us. And it is not about making things okay. It is about reminding ourselves to look back at our lives instead of away from it. It is about looking and finding the core, deepest parts of goodness that still remain in us or in the world, even after tragedy, suffering, or loss. That we remember that there are reasons that we deserve to be with our life and find the best parts of the world. And we remind our body and our brain that you are safe, you are okay right now.
Right.
Maybe not in the world, maybe not, maybe still watch your back out there. But every time you give yourself a moment of that kind of companionship, that soothing, that regulation, you give yourself a moment of justice. And these moments add up. They add up in our body so that we don't feel constantly under threat by ourselves,
Yeah.
right? I mean, because there's the threat of the world, and then we impose more threat on ourselves. And so what we want to do is unlayer that and use these tools to actually give ourselves back power. And so, it's why I say to people that loving yourself in terms of self-compassion is not woo. It's a bold act of justice, because what happens when we berate ourselves is that we stay in our threat center. Our brain and our body take self-threat the same as external threat. So if you're giving yourself self-criticism and berating yourself, the brain says, don't go there. It's not safe. You are not okay. And when we give ourselves back some soothing love, you're okay, I accept you right now. Even if I want something better, I'm going to say it's okay right now. Then we move into our executive function centers in our
Yeah.
prefrontal cortex, and we're able to make change. We're able to step boldly back out into the world that betrayed us. So these are tools of justice. They're tools that not only give us joy, they give us power to be here because we deserve to.
Wow. Those are really, it's just, I'm currently, so coming back to my body, I'm currently feeling a lightness in my being, but coming from just really from the stomach, or, as just to be easy for everybody, and there's this strength that's coming up within me. And I love the fact that you said that we have to help ourselves to feel, we have to be safe in ourselves first.
Yes.
So that I think it also helps as a moment of reset as well, which is really important. And then so that we can, and I love the fact that you say it doesn't have to be much. It builds up over time. So this remembering that who we are, what we are, that we are safe to be that way, because no one can really change that if we choose that within ourselves, that strength within ourselves. It's there. It's just
Right.
it's time to access that through pure presence and pure remembering of who you are. And that brings me to people that we see in the lives of, say, Mahatma Gandhi, where he fought very, very strongly on a lot of external causes, but yet he had to come back to himself. He was always in that internal strength of, this is where I am, this is who I am, this is my internal joy, and this is my internal peace. And with that quiet strength, then come out to the world and go, this is what I'm fighting for. And people just went, all right, we're behind you. There's a lot of people were really inspired by what he did. And also he managed to do a lot of things, and so is with a lot of different people as well, in that sense. But he comes to mind for me straight away for some reason. So that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. And also coming with a lot of not so much safe, be feeling threatened by the world, feeling threatened by what's happening with us externally. There's a lot of trauma that's been happening in the world as well, and you can see a lot of it happening at the moment. It's almost like this reckoning, or this realization, or this remembering is coming up, and we're starting to hear a lot of words like trauma healing, and so each one of us, I guess, has a certain amount of trauma in our bodies, that we hold, and we may be aware, or we may not be aware. Some people are still going through trauma, and I just have my whole heart and breath is with you. So how does healing our trauma and finding that joy within, what deeper effects does it have? I think some of us we hear a lot about epigenetics and ancestral healing, and how does finding our joy really help with all of that? And
well, we know now that trauma lives in our body through the work of amazing scientists and writers. And Bessel van der Kolk, Rachel Yehuda really is a hero of mine. But just these people who have shown us that, Rachel Yehuda specifically studied Holocaust families and how the markers on their genes, the markers of this immense trauma, lived on for grandchildren, for future generations, and not necessarily she sifted out whether it was because they heard about it so much. It really lived on and made changes in their DNA.
Wow.
And and that's been replicated over and over. And so what we know now is that trauma lives in our body. That's why we clench, get tight when we are in a situation that reminds us of something, or we start sweating, or our stomach hurts, or whatever where it lives for you. And what I say to patients, though, is that that's also, I would have them look at the strength of it. Trauma lives in your body, but that's also where it can heal. And so if we can step lightly back into our bodies and be with the pain and the trauma, it's not easy and it's not quick, but the more we can step lightly and gently back into our bodies, even with simple first steps, not easy, but simple, of saying, what am I feeling right now? And just noting it. Like you noted about your stomach. Yeah, that comes second nature, I can tell to you now. But there must have been a time where it wasn't. I remember, when it wasn't for me. And I remember people would say, where do you feel that in your body? And I would sort of look at them like, I'm just thinking about it, right? And I realized I was disconnecting, right? That somatic body experience was not connected for me in that way. And now I see it very quickly. So if I see someone who looks like a threatening person because they remind me of a trauma that I had, I feel it right away in a certain part of my body. And I know, oh, there it is. I'm having a fear response. And I might not be safe, so I'm going to get out of here. I'm glad I'm having a fear response. But so it's not always a bad thing. In fact, that's how we've survived, right? But we now know that the way we move, the way we breathe, the way we eat, the way we think, the way we connect can all do genetic changes on those epigenetic markers. And so what I would say to people is that there is hope, there is power in the way we move forward with our stories. And so I don't have a randomized trial to tell you that my children are going to be less traumatized than I was. And at the same time, I have hope that in my culture, mothers were never shown to me or taught to me to have joy if their child was suffering. You have to show your love through suffering,
Yep.
through grief and through crying and through sadness. And I am changing that story for my children. I am changing that story that I can be sad. I can know this is hard. And I also can have pure joy with my son, with my other children, with my family. And the more we connect to our joy, the more we rewrite that story over and over and over. And who knows, maybe my great grandchildren will not have the same marker I do on mine. And so I can't prove that to you. I'll be long gone, but it's not a trial I'm going to wait for. I'm going to do it now, and I'm going to keep doing it because I know it feels right and good.
Yes.
And so when people say to me, what you're doing, after Vanessa, after almost every talk, people will say, what you said really moved me or inspired me or touched me, but it sounds too hard. It sounds too hard to be with your pain. And I'm sure there's someone listening or watching who's thinking that. And what I would say is this is just an invitation. I'm not saying you have to do this, but I would challenge anyone who says that. I would just gently challenge you that it may sound too hard, but escaping your pain and living in numbness is actually harder. Yep. And if we can get to a place where we can have more of that joy, love, hope, and beauty that is a companion to the suffering and brutal, painful parts of life, life is a whole lot better.
Yep. And our body also, I think, just reflecting on that, our body also wants to just bring us back to what we know. And so if we know only that and what we've been told and what we've been, whatever's coming at us at the moment. So I'm not diminishing any of that. I'm just saying if just from a purely sort of, I guess, science point of view, let me just, or it's just a mind point of view. Let me put it this way. Your body is really, is comfortable with certain emotions that it feels all the time. So when it goes into a new type of emotion, a new type of feeling in the body doesn't want it. It's always going to be hard. It always is. It's like when you're trying to do something new.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable. There's a bit of fear in there because your body, your mind, everything is trying to protect you, really.
Yes.
And so you are going to feel it. You are going to feel it's going to be difficult. But then there is a certain thing of, why do you want to do it? And and also, remembering that we are serving not only ourselves, but also our future generations by, hey, it's not a should, but what if we could all just tap into that, whatever little joy we can find in ourselves, whatever little strength we can find in ourselves, and start changing it just little bit by little bit. And eventually, will help our future generations perhaps remember. But on the same token, at least we have brought that little bit to ourselves, right? So it's kind of
right.
Like, there's no harm in going for just bringing yourself back to your body, bringing yourself back in your presence, remembering how incredible a being you are. And also, being a scientist, and I work a lot with molecular biology, molecular markers and genetics as well. And just to sort of let everyone know, these things take time. So when I used to study drug discovery in in the malaria parasite. And so one of the ways we did was to modify the genes of a certain pathway in order to figure out how it worked and how the drug would work. Now, you modify a gene and think, okay, it's going to work straight away. No, it doesn't. It takes cycles and cycles and cycles before the gene is, properly activated. You got to, and the right things happen in the cell. And when you put the drug in, it doesn't necessarily work straight away. It takes, time for it to work because we are activating certain genes on and off. And and this is how our bodies, which is amazing, work. And so just to sort of, I just bring my my little reflection and perspective on it. That I really resonate with what you're saying. It's that we can bring so much in our lives just by changing how we view ourselves and changing that. Oh, sorry, I'm just getting a bit.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I mean, we can make the changes do take time. I agree. And at the same time, the way we feel through that time it takes doesn't take that long to change. So, when we feel differently in our body, we know it pretty soon. So I would say those bigger changes may take a little longer, but the changes you'll feel right away will be far more beneficial right away.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I love that to remind me and everyone else about that. So there's also a term that's bantered around, which is resilience. And there's different ways of looking at it. And you mentioned in some of your work that, you reject the wellness world's definition of resilience. So, could you comment on that? What is?
Yeah, we're handed this definition that says, resilience is how well you bounce back to yourself, how you're able to, and actually there's a real linguistic origin of the word and sort of bouncing back to who you are through a challenge and so forth. But I think that is a little fraught, because what it's really saying is that we have to be resilient to injustice and to systems that oppress us and to trauma and grief. And I would say instead that resilience, that any suffering we go through does change us. We don't go back to normal. You never would, never, either for hard or good. We just do not go back to normal. And nor would I say I'd want to, actually. I'd want to have the gift of hopefully that any suffering I have teaches me something and hopefully changes me in some way that makes me a different person that I am happy with. Sometimes it doesn't. So the key though is understanding that bouncing back to normal is almost a fallacy. I don't know who can do that. I don't think people are resilient and they just get through things, And I also don't think that we not only are we not meant to do that, but I think we're wielding harm against ourselves and each other by expecting that. And so what I really think is that the world is asking of us so much, and our resilience and our justice is how we choose to answer what they ask of us. So how do you check in with yourself? How do you know what you need, right? Are you trying to fit a definition of resilience that the world has given you, that you should heal from grieving a loss in 3 months or 6 months, or, or are you checking in with yourself and having that awareness we talked about with the breath or other tools where no, today I need to say no to that. Today I need to do this. And as much as we can, to the constraints of life and the way we have to make a paycheck and all of that, if we can understand what we need, we can tend to ourselves better. And that is resilience. Resilience isn't bouncing back to normal. It is resilient to get up every morning when you're suffering. It is resilience to say, I will do this again, even though yesterday was horrible. That is resilience, right? And so people don't see that as resilience, though, because we aren't given a way to look at our capacity for living the brutal parts of this life as resilience. Just being here is resilient. So, I think about what our ancestors have been through, my blood as well as global ancestry, what people have suffered through, and what they have gone through to make sure that we are all here. That is resilience,
Yeah.
And so I don't think that this idea of bouncing back to normal makes any sense. And I think it wields some harm on us.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, as you said, the word there for me, the one thing is expectation. If you give
Yes.
some expectation, and that's um and that's what's happening, that causes a lot of pain as well in the world. We don't need that one more thing um that we put ourselves as well. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's incredible. And it and to me also, like when that awareness comes about, and we're sitting there and we're judging ourselves, there's an element I find personally of joy that is forgiveness. That's an element that I guess we in as compassion, as kindness, as you said before. And what is your reflection on that, on helping yourself with your own personal joy revolution?
Yeah. Um, I I actually have, you might laugh, Vanessa, I just have to read the sentence. We didn't plan on this, but I'm just reading the sentence so that you understand. My first line of the chapter on forgiveness, which is called It's Not Forgiveness, It's Grace. I say, I am so tired of forgiveness. I say my body bristles every time I think about it. I know the science, I know it heals, but it also needs to fit your revolution. I'm
Mm.
tired of being asked to do work for someone else's wrongs. I've worked hard enough to be here and start each day. And so for me, the word forgiveness doesn't work. And I instead abide by grace, which is much more spacious for me, to give
Right.
myself grace, to give others grace for their wrongs, and also my grace that I don't need to be around them, to give grace for myself if I've hurt myself or someone else, to understand that I'm only human, that they're human, and we can all connect in that messy part of humanity. And for me, grace makes much more sense. And people might say, well, it's the same thing. I think you could argue that. For me, though, grace is much softer and more of my will and my doing, and more of what I want to give to this world and give myself.
Mm.
And so that's why it feels more justice oriented to me. But
Yep.
everybody gets to choose their word or their way of doing it. And this is not a book about the path. It is a book about a path you find, and about some touchstones that I offer as ways to find your touchstones.
Yep.
So I do really think that we all, the hardest thing when I do imageries and meditations with patients and clients around forgiveness or grace, whatever you want to use, the hardest thing is when it comes to ourselves, always.
Yeah.
The tears start flowing, and so I think that we are really hard on ourselves. I think we don't give ourselves enough grace. We think that we're supposed to be superhuman of some kind. And, I, someone was asking me, like, you emanate joy and power. And I said, yeah, I do. Actually, I really do. And I cry every day, or I get frustrated and angry, or some
Yep.
days I'm complaining and I'm just so negative, or,
Yep.
like, this is not a one done deal. It is, I give myself grace for being a full human. That is what joy is
Yep.
embracing humanity and the full continuum. It's not about being happy or good all the time. It's
Love it.
not.
Yep. And Brene Brown says about, just in terms of your definition of joy, she talks about it being twinkling lights, glimmers in your soul, that there are times where
Mhm.
they're on, the glimmers are on, and sometimes the glimmers are off, but all is all part of joy, because that's part of being human. And I think,
Yeah.
that's that's the same definition as well. And just reflecting on your word grace, it is a word that I use personally. So one of my one of the, I give myself certain sort of two words or one word every time. And at one stage, as I was going through reconnecting with my body, my two words was fierce grace. Because it gave me, and coming from sort of a Christian background, forgiveness was about someone forgiving you. And it wasn't so much about me forgiving myself. But as you said, grace gives you that space. It gives you that almost that it's okay. And grace comes from within me. So yeah, it's actually interesting that you just said that, because yeah, fierce grace was my word, and it got me through some pretty tough times in my journey. And it reminds me as well of who I am, where I'm going, and who I want to be in the world for myself first. And that's kind of, that's my reflection on that.
I love it. Yeah.
And so finally, just to, and wrapping up, I don't want to end this conversation, but
I know.
So throughout this whole summit and throughout your book and throughout, your work, and the work of everyone else, we're coming back to really, presence, back to loving ourselves, getting to know who we are and what we really want in the world, how we want to move, and being okay with that, give ourselves the grace. So, just to wrap this up, how is then, loving ourselves a bold step towards justice for ourselves and for the people that we love around us?
Yeah. I mean, when we give ourselves a moment of love or self-compassion, what we're really telling ourselves is we are okay, we are safe, even if the world has betrayed us, that we deserve to boldly step back out into the world, even if it has knocked us down.
Yep.
We deserve to be here. And when we know that all the parts of us, all our experiences, everything we've encountered or suffered through are part of the fabric of what makes us human and makes us powerful, that we are able to do all of this despite what we have experienced or because of what we have experienced, then we are able to love ourselves as humans who are powerful here in this world. I will tell you that I don't think a day goes by, I really don't, where I don't have to exert self-compassion because I hear my voice telling myself something berating. And it isn't about any of us extinguishing that forever. I don't think that's possible. What's possible is to form a relationship with that voice that, as you said, is just trying to protect us and keep us out of fear or out of danger. But it often, and I know for me, keeps me small. And so when I can give myself love and compassion and say, you are okay, you can be here. Someone just asked me today, in a talk I gave earlier, they said that they were kind of having this dysregulation of their nervous system and really having trouble, very volatile. And they said, what can I do? And I said, what would you say to a loved one or a friend who came to you and said that? There's no trick answer. What would you say? And they said, I would say, I'm here for you if you need me. And I said, exactly. You would comfort them. Why can't we comfort ourselves when the world isn't doing it for us? That's a bold act of justice.
Yep. I'm just letting that sink with all of us. What is the justice that you can do for yourself? That one thing that you can do for yourself. And I love your reflection on if you would do that for someone that you love deeply, could you do that for yourself? An important question. And would you do it for yourself? That's another important question as well. And I would love to ask you a final question. I asked this of all the speakers of the summit. Close your eyes. I invite you to close your eyes and imagine yourself as a little girl. What is the one thing you would say to her to set her on her path of joy and abundance?
I would say you deserve it.
Mm,
You deserve it. Never doubt that.
thank you so much.
Thank you for this, Vanessa, and thank you for what you're doing for everyone here.
You're welcome. I receive all that with an open heart, a joyful heart. I want to thank you for coming today on such short notice.
I'm so glad it worked out.
I know we believe that the universe is sends the people you need at the right place and the right time, and also just sitting in that seat of, of knowing, okay, this is what I want to bring to the world in the summit, and also for myself first, because this has also been a research project for me in some ways, and also it's been also a learning project for me as well, everyone. So I'm not sitting here as a know-it-all, but I'm really sitting here in my own knowledge of this is what I really would love to learn. This is what I really would love to have conversations with. Can I share this with everyone else while I have those conversations with these beautiful, amazing women who have been through their own journeys and have been through back to who they are, their self-love. It's again, it's a daily thing. It is, and is also, I would love to say to everyone, that is the knowledge that you are not alone. That all of us are in our own journeys at some point, our own paths. So we have all these amazing women who provide support and resources in different areas of their expertise. These are all available on the website for the summit. You have Tanmeet's got her, I put up her website and also how to purchase her book. So go to the website, it's easier there. Just have a look at what's available, have a look at all the resources there. And if you need to reach out to someone, have a chat. You're not alone. And we go through different facets of our life, where different facets start to become something that we need to bring into our awareness and to work with. And I think it's important to embrace that, to nurture it with grace and with love. And thank you everybody for joining in. I can't think of a better way of ending this summit and wrapping it up. VIPs, we have a masterclass on Monday, the 18th of September, Australian time, so it's 17th for you guys in the US. Yes, time zones, Anyway, giving ourselves grace. So yes, don't forget about that. Put it in your calendars. We'll see you at 9 a.m. Australian time then. If anybody wants to attend these masterclass, we had the first one on really defining what we've talked about. What do you really want? What are your values? What do you stand for? How can you give yourself the grace, what are the values that bring you joy, that help you make those decisions on the days when you're not when you are dealing with the denseness of your emotions, that it helps to move you forward. It helps to, and I found it has to. So we worked on that now, and what those unconscious beliefs that we've had from our bodies keeping us safe, to a new story, to a new path, which we'll do on Monday as well. And I incorporate it with Breathwork simply because it is a way to clear that path from those leaves and those stones, in order to say, how can I give myself that space in order to figure out what I want right now in the present moment. So thanks guys for joining us. Much love. See ya. Now Vanessa has to figure out how to end it on Facebook. So bye guys. And stop recording.